for Sunday, May 24th, Memorial Day weekend. You've found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, it's a shuttle bus confusion in Cobb County, pension problems in the Atlanta City pension funds, and Republicans flock to Georgia in a presidential cattle show. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And a good day. We're glad you could be with us on this Memorial Day weekend. This is the time when a lot of people go to the beach, but a lot of people remember the sacrifices made for all of us by our veterans in the service. And the Memorial Day observances will take place tomorrow. Hope that if you're not at the beach, you'll try and partake in one of them, don't you think? So here we are. You know, it's odd that we're leading the Georgia Gang with shuttle buses. We've never done that before. But I think there's a reason, because this situation in Cobb County involving the Braves, I thought it was going to be a whole lot more seamless than it is. But Phil, they're talking about $1.7 million for a Braves shuttle bus in that Cobb Galleria area to land at the new ballpark.
That's right.
But the Cobb Galleria people are saying, we don't want you here.
Well, and we've talked about this on the broadcast before, that Cobb County government is making it up as they go along. We thought maybe that they were hiding things. Well, they weren't hiding things. They hadn't figured it out.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the Cumberland Mall parking situation has not been resolved at all. Cumberland Mall doesn't want Braves parking over there. And if you want to talk about the bridge, that is another disaster over I-285 to the proposed ballpark. Tim Lee, you remember, said, oh, that'll be about $3 million. Well, all of us on this broadcast said that's not right. That's not going to be right. Now it's the taxpayers got to be really nervous, Dick.
Well, I think so. And I really thought that the planning was further advanced than it appears to be. That Cobb County reporter for the AJC could, you know, he's got an easy job. It's just something new every day.
Now,
Easy picking.
The construction is going apace if you drive by there. Now, we got, what, 2 years to go before the first pitch?
Yeah,
So,
it seems they figured out
they'll get it together.
the ballpark area and the development plan for around the ballpark, but they didn't even give a thought to the transportation.
Well,
piece.
you know, it's worrisome that the shuttle proposal is not just related to the ballpark. It was there before.
Right.
But it becomes critical, Jeff, I think, with the ballpark, because people are going to be in far-flung parking lots. Remember, that new stadium doesn't have a lot of parking. Turner Field had too much parking, in a sense. But, you know, they've got to plan better.
Well, you have no choice then but to shuttle people to the ballpark. And so that's what they're going to have to do. You know, it's just when you move, you know, an organization of this size and complexity without a lot of forethought, you know, but you're just looking at the economic development benefits and not really the logistics, you're going to have a lot of problems. And I think that that's what they're saying. Now, go solve your shuttle issues and all the rest, and you still have a transportation problem, and that's the interstates and getting people out there, because they're already clogged without Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's going to be funny too. Suppose they end up having to buy space in downtown Atlanta and shuttle people from there. That's hilarious.
Well, it's not giving me a lot of confidence, as you suggested, Phil. I thought they were farther along in the planning. Now, one local rail issue that I don't have a lot of confidence in either is the Atlanta streetcar and the trolley Follies in downtown Atlanta. And this week, Benita Dodd, our old friend of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, did a great job exposing all the cost overruns. None of their projections have even been close. The thing is free still till the end of the year.
Right.
And someone else reported that there are only 3 drivers qualified to drive the 2 cars that they have, because the 3rd car is in the shop.
Got it.
So, and Marta blames the city, and the city blames Marta.
Well, you know,
who's to blame?
I don't know. I read Benita's piece. So, you know, I've known Benita a long time. I think she's a wonderful person. One of the things that stood out to me was that she said that the train was so crowded. Well, if it's so crowded and it's not doing well, what's up? What's going on?
Right.
You know, I've talked to some of the
Right.
folks over there in that area, and they seem to be getting some of an economic boost from the streetcar being there. There are plans to expand the streetcar to the Beltline, and I think that that would be a real boon for the city, because there's nothing more popular in Atlanta than the Beltline.
At least on
But
the east
remember
side.
that the streetcar is still free. what would the ridership be if they were charging for it?
Well,
that's what I wonder.
You know, we don't know what the ridership would be if they're charging for it. We do know that in the federal grant that came along, there were some operating dollars up front, and that's what they're using to cover and to subsidize those rides. But in the meantime, you know, you get an opportunity to get some folks in there who can depend on it. You know, you've got Georgia State students there who can depend on it, and tourists
even the
are getting
tourists,
on
and
it.
particularly
Exactly
the tourists who are going
right.
from the King Center over
Well,
to
you can't continue
Olympic
to have
Park.
it free.
No, you cannot.
Well,
That's not
but it will
sustainable
build
over
the habit
time.
and
Right.
build the buzz and build the reputation.
And what happened, and you all saw this, was that when they tried to charge people, you had to go through 10 different hoops with regard to the system, and that didn't work, and so now they're back to the drawing board.
What if we took the Atlanta streetcar
Here we go. What you gonna say?
and
Dick?
encircled
Something outrageous.
Cumberland Galleria and the new ballpark with the Atlanta streetcar? Would that work?
Yeah,
Because it's a boondoggle
Wait,
all the way
you
around.
only have 3 drivers.
Well, that's true. That's true.
You have to increase the speeds. I think that they operate at about 8 to 11 miles per hour.
Now, you mentioned the Beltline. You
might take
mentioned
a
the
little too
Beltline,
long.
Jeff. And I was surprised this week when the new head of the Beltline came out and said they've got to resolve this problem with the city money flowing to the Atlanta Public Schools.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But he's in charge of the Beltline. He wants to keep that money, doesn't he?
Well, you know, I think that everybody wants to be able to make the investment in the Beltline. That was the intent of the TAD in the first place, that the school system, along with the city and others, agreed to. I just think that they locked in, I mean, we've had this conversation before, they locked in some hard dollar amounts instead of percentages, and then we all know what happened in 2008, 2009. The George Bush recession wrecked the economy. And so,
The Barack Obama.
No.
Well, but I mean, it really is a problem that's got to be resolved.
it does have
Yeah.
to be resolved, and it has to be resolved with some sort of settlement on past amounts owed and some revision, obviously.
Well, there's a contract, as you
forward.
know.
To
There's
that,
a
Well,
there
that's
is
what he's
a
saying.
contract.
that's the
There's
problem.
a contract that was never, I don't think, intended by any of the parties to
It's a
to
contract.
bankrupt
It's
the
a
Beltline.
contract that's being broken by the city.
Yeah, but I don't think that anybody ever had any intention of bankrupting the Beltline. The intent was, of course, again, to create economic development around the Beltline that would raise all boats. And by that, I mean all tax revenues flowing to all of those organizations,
right.
including Atlanta
school
Public
board.
Schools.
Yeah, but the Atlanta Public Schools have a tangible need for those funds and probably had budgeted accordingly that they would receive those funds. All right, we're going to jump out of this segment and we're going to come back with a segment that we'll call Corruption. And it's not all in DeKalb. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Those of us who live in DeKalb County are used to sort of a weekly dose of corruption, but this week the bigger story was in the city of Atlanta, where watershed employees were charged with stealing copper, spending the stuff with recycling firms. It took a long time for them to get that. There were months and months of reports, and they finally arrested 4 people. And the same in DeKalb. We can't leave them out, but there were only 2 in DeKalb.
There's been 7 people arrested now in Atlanta.
Okay, and only 2 in DeKalb.
Right.
All right, now on a more serious and bigger
I'm not
note.
so sure I would call that corruption.
What's that?
I don't know I would call it corruption. That's just outright theft. That's
Yeah,
what that
oh,
is.
that's
They're
true.
just employee stealing.
And no
Yes.
one is overseeing it in the city.
Well, obviously
the
they
city
are
is
because
overseeing.
They found
What do you
out.
mean?
The police finally have gotten the tips. You know, we've been talking about the Atlanta department for years.
Well, yeah, but you had an audit that the AJC described as
Right.
scathing, and
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right.
and so
city did
I
take
think that the city's been on
action
top of it.
I think it took
Absolutely.
far too long.
I would say it took too long as well. Now, late in the week, we learned that a firm that helps the city of Atlanta manage its pension funds, run by a fellow named Larry Gray, has been nailed hard by the Securities and Exchange Commission for investing city pension funds in the company's own funds. And there's a pattern of that goes to the fellow's work in a couple of cities in Michigan. And here, that is the kind of potential corruption that can cost people money. Those pension funds apparently have just been played with, trifled with. That's serious business.
And there should have been better vetting of this individual, too.
Well, I presume he got it as part of a minority contract.
Well, yeah, and he's been around a long time. I think that, you know, he's got a long and established reputation. But, I mean, there are some state guidelines that you have to
Right.
follow. And, you know, just reading the news reports, I don't know, there may be more to it, and his lawyer is contesting all of this. But reading the news reports, it doesn't look like those guidelines were followed, that you have to have a minimum number of investors, other investors, outside investors in a fund, that you have to have a minimum amount at $100 million, and that wasn't reached. And so there are some issues. And, you know, Mayor of the City of Atlanta has been trying to extricate and move away from that for some time now.
Now, turning to the Atlanta-Fulton County Recreation Authority, John Eves made some noise this week, the chairman of the Fulton County Commission, saying that he just doesn't think it's right that Keisha Lance Bottoms has been appointed to be the executive director of that.
And also being a member of the Atlanta City Council.
Well, and she would make, on the one hand, she would make $135,000 a year as the manager of the Recreation Authority and $60,000 as an Atlanta City Councilman. And I didn't realize those council salaries had gotten that high since I stopped covering them on a regular basis. I think it's wrong. I agree with John Eves. I don't think you can have two government posts at once.
Well,
and what happens when she has to vote at City Council on something that the Recreation Authority is doing?
Well, she's already said that she would recuse herself from doing such a vote, that she would not participate because of the potential for appearance of a conflict of interest. But the way the whole situation is set up, the city controls the authority anyway. They have the majority number of members of the board, so they carry any vote, and they get to appoint the executive director, which the mayor did. So you know, it is a legitimate concern, but I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere. Because, well, the city, you know, law department said it was not a conflict. But on the other hand, when Chairman Eves raised the point, I think he requested, or was it Senator Ford, Vincent Ford?
Well, I think Eves went to the state attorney general,
right.
and I think they said you can't do this.
And asked for an opinion, and they did say it was potential for a conflict. So I guess they will resolve it in the courts.
Well, some good news for Atlanta this week, going from watershed to pension to Recreation Authority. There is good news. The city is a semifinalist for the Super Bowls in 2019 and 2020 when the new Falcon Stadium is up and running. I think that's superb news. And generally, if you build a new stadium,
That's what happens.
with government support, you're rewarded with a Super Bowl.
That's right.
That's right. And I think you'll see soon the naming rights announced.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
You have some information on that? Okay.
Breaking news on the Georgia game.
Okay. Do you
It'll be
want to
interesting
speculate on who it is?
No.
No, you're not ready? Okay. Well, I want to talk about something we didn't get to last week. We just ran out of time. I don't understand this. Somebody put up billboards in the city of Atlanta that say, "Don't run," meaning don't run from police.
It was the Police Civilian Review Board that did it.
Oh, the Police Civilian Review Board did that. I couldn't remember that. What's wrong with don't run? Why did those boards come down? Why did the city want them to come down? What's wrong with don't run?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you tell your child that?
It's common sense. It's common sense. And we talked about Councilwoman Keisha Lance Bottoms. She said, oh, this sends the wrong signal, you know, blah, blah, blah. We're making these people victims. Well, you know, as a policeman, if you see something running, that's a dangerous situation right there, with crime up, especially in the city of Atlanta. I'm very disappointed. Even Keisha Lance Bottoms, I think, kind of backed off by the end of the week and said, well, I would advise my child not to run, even if the police are in the wrong, and let's settle it that way, because an arrest really is just an allegation.
Look,
Well, if the
we're
police
all
are in the
parents
wrong,
here.
you can't settle it if you're dead. So I think it's just it was an inflammatory.
Well, I think that's terrible. If you're
kind of
assuming the
billboard.
police are just going to shoot people,
Well,
that's
in
irresponsible.
the current environment.
Oh,
I-
that's
I'm
in
speaking
the
of-
Well,
city
in the
of
current
Atlanta-
environment, I mean, how long has the environment been current? We got the AJC all
Right.
over this story
How
from
about
Union
350
City.
years?
In 2011, 4 years ago, kid didn't run. He was laying on his stomach. He was handcuffed and shot twice
You
in
know,
the back.
these cases you can talk about, but what about the murder rate in the city of Atlanta, mostly blacks?
No. That's
It's
not.
up this year.
But that's not what
And
we're talking about.
Police are trying
we're
to.
talking about
well,
a
let's come back.
19-year-old
You don't
kid
run. You don't
getting
run.
murdered in the street and then having a grand
So
jury.
you would run if you're stopped?
I'm not saying that you run or that you don't run. What
that
I'm
was the
saying,
point
Phil,
of
is
the
that we've got a
billboards.
serious issue here, and I think that, and let me make the AJC my winner for bringing that back on, because this kid would never have gotten justice. 19 years old, and what you need to have maybe in your household is a 19-year-old black kid who's out there in the street, and you're wondering every day if he's going to come home.
Well, this
So
is
I'll
not the
grant
norm.
I'll grant you, Jeff, that Union City story is very troubling. No,
Yeah.
there's no question about
Right,
that.
yeah.
But what I'm talking about, we're all parents here, all four
Right.
of us. Wouldn't you advise your child, if you are stopped by a policeman, don't run?
Yeah.
Yes,
Isn't
you
that
do,
common
but
sense?
that, yes, it is common sense.
Good,
But
I'm
I'm
glad
saying
you
that
did.
is a private conversation that you have with
You
your
don't want a
family.
billboard,
Not
maybe?
a billboard. No, you don't want that.
Why don't you want to reinforce a
but
public
it's
safety
inflammatory
issue?
because it makes it seem like
Inflammatory?
yeah, it makes it seem like the cops are out to get you,
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Well,
and they are sometimes.
Oh, come on.
Very.
Please.
There's
very-
rogue
But
people
we're
in
all
every
parents
profession.
here, but only 2 of us have black boys.
Well, listen, I've been set up unfairly by the police myself, but I don't blame the police for everything.
I don't
Well,
blame the police for everything either, but I'm just saying it was
It's
not a
common
helpful.
sense, don't run. And the problem is, a lot of these youngsters don't have 2 parents to give them that advice. So I think that's why the billboards are
Well,
up.
one parent can give that advice.
You know, it's a dangerous situation
Goodness
when
gracious.
you are running and when a police officer and there's crime involved. That is, even the head of the civilian police board said, you know, that you're just creating danger if you're urging them to run.
All right.
Well,
we
you're
will,
not urging anybody to run. Nobody's doing
Well,
saying
the
that.
message is run. It's
all right,
okay.
Oh,
We've got to
please.
get out of this. When we come back, we're going to have Phil give us a first-hand view of several Republican presidential contenders visiting Georgia. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Before we turn to the presidential contenders in Georgia, we should mention that in the next couple of months, we're going to have several special elections that really only matter to the people who live in those districts. You know, it's odd. Phil, one seat looks like it's been filled, and that's the late Harry Geisinger, whose death we remarked on.
That's right.
Betty Price, the wife of Congressman Tom Price, she's a Roswell City councilman, and she is, I believe, the only person to have qualified for that seat.
That's right. That would be July 14th. That's a heavily Republican district around Roswell, and you'd have to say already she's the front runner. There's a couple interesting ones, though, coming up very quickly on June 16th. One involves that big district in Atlanta. It's a state house district that Tyrone Brooks represented, and that's open now. Now, this is very
And
interesting.
he held that seat forever.
He held the seat forever. There's 7 candidates running. Now, it's officially nonpartisan. There's one independent who is running, is a fellow named John Guest. And Tyrone Brooks Jr. may or may not run because there's a residency problem, but if the GOP vote, which is very small, Barack Obama carried the district by over 80%. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Let me just say that right now, 80%. But if all the Republicans vote, this independent could squeak in. So stay tuned.
Well, we'll
That
see, huh?
is the slimmest of predictions.
That's right.
Let me tell you something.
And
You talk about
I don't know.
Too far out on that hill.
thin reed.
That
Phil
is.
just went on a real thin reed.
I agree.
Oh, boy.
And you'd have to say prayers and
pretty
light
funny.
a candle if you're the
Yeah,
independent.
absolutely.
That's right. All right, so Phil, you among us went to the Georgia Republican Convention this past weekend, last weekend in Athens. What were there, 4 Republican presidential contenders?
You had 3 that visited.
Chris Christie.
You had Chris Christie, you had Marco Rubio, and you had Ted Cruz.
Okay.
And they all went over well. I think Christie not so much, but it is interesting. You know, you can mingle with these people and talk to them like we're talking now, and there's a lot of excitement. And then you've got John Kasich coming in, the governor of Ohio, who's a probable candidate, coming in this week to visit Atlanta and to go to the big Walton County barbecue. You'll be having Scott Walker coming in probably in the next couple of months. So Georgia is very important. You know, we've talked about
Because
the
of
March
the
1st primary here, and there's going to be probably up to 7 southern states
Well,
voting that day.
Let me ask you, Phil, about the reaction of the delegates. They're generally going to be conservative activists, right? And so I would think Ted Cruz would have been their big favorite.
Yes, that's correct. He gave a dinner speech, and it was very rousing. You know, he likes to be mic'd up and walk around the audience, and there's a lot of dynamism there in his speaking, whether you like him or not. And Marco Rubio gave a very compelling speech. He came from very humble beginnings. He kind of unfolded his story for people who didn't know what he was all about. So it was very interesting for people to learn who these people were.
Well, they've got that problem that we've talked about privately. They've got, how do you get 19 people into your debates when your first debate is coming up in August?
Well, you saw where Fox did.
Fox is going to separate them into two.
Fox is going to separate them, and also going to call them out through polling. They have to do well in at least 5 national polls in order to make it.
But they're going to limit that first debate to 9 or 10?
Yes, and CNN has got a... It is, and CNN is going to have to limit it, and that'll be another one coming up too.
What do you think is going to happen, Phil?
I think they're going to have to go by the national polls, and finally, they have to narrow it down.
Do they get to stack those polls? How do they do that?
Well, it's just they're going to take 5 leading national polls and then see who's on top and pick them.
As I have told you before, Phil, if you do something silly like eliminate Dr. Ben Carson, the only black candidate on the Republican side, if you eliminate him, you've really committed a bad act. You know, it's not, this is dicey, and I think it could really come back and bite the Republicans. One good thing that the Republicans won't have to worry about is when the ABC debate comes around, George Stephanopoulos won't be involved because he's a virtual paid employee of the Clinton family, and somebody finally called him out.
Well, you're right, but you know what's funny? Randy Evans, our Georgia National Committee man, made a report to the convention and said, you know, it was disingenuous for ABC to say that he wasn't going to be a questioner. The RNC has already said they would never have him.
Let him.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and beyond that, they also may have to make the decision to eliminate the one-woman candidate too, right?
Well,
from the top tier.
It all depends again on the polling. They also, by the way, the RNC.
That's true. That's what I meant. I meant to add that.
Yeah,
good call.
That wouldn't be good either. The RNC also said
they should then have affirmative action for
well, I don't know how
Republican
you do it.
presidential candidates.
No.
Is that what you're suggesting?
they have to get their names up in the polls.
You remember back a few years ago when we were heading to the Georgia primary and another local station, not this one, eliminated Alan Keyes, who was a candidate for president, a black fellow.
Absolutely.
And he showed up at the station and raised Cain and pointed out you can't have that. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And before we begin, let me remind everyone this is Memorial Day weekend. There's a reason we have the Monday holiday, and there'll be observances all over the metro area, and we salute those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. All right, let's turn to you, Jeffrey, winners and losers.
Very good. Thank you, Dick. We do indeed. Again, I'd like to, the AJC, I think, is a winner for reopening that case in Union City of the police shooting and prompting a new review by the district attorney. That's good news, and I hope that there is justice for that family of that 19-year-old young man. I'd also like to salute Leah Dickerson, Rochelle Clark, and all of the other graduates of DeKalb School of the Arts.
Yay!
Congratulations to them.
That's your last one through the pipeline, right?
No. I have one more.
One more?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Congratulations. Phil, what do you have?
Well, I'm going to make Governor Deal the winner. He was in California this past week, in L.A., and of course he was promoting Georgia's booming film industry. And I saw a piece, you may have seen it the other day, that more movies are being made now in Georgia than in California. So that's very interesting. A couple, one winner, John Padgett, we mentioned the Republican convention last weekend. He's the new chairman, re-elected for the Republican Party. The loser, remember Mike Berlin, the disgraced attorney. He was chairman of the Democrat Party a couple years back. He's a sleazebag and a crook. He's now in prison 5 years for defrauding his clients.
Defrauding his clients, that's right. All right, Alexis.
Okay, I'm going to start by saluting Andy Young. He had a wonderful celebration in which he inaugurated International Leadership Awards and recognized several people, including Ava DuVernay, who was the director of the movie Selma, and also Atlanta's own Elena Shepard, who was the co-founder of the Shepard Spinal Clinic. And also, I want to salute Frank Barnum and Margot, what was Margot's? Cargan. They were killed on a trip to Savannah.
Yeah, in the wheelchair.
In a wheelchair. He was marking the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and killed by a truck.
Oh.
It was terrible.
Very sad.
Yeah,
Very
that's
sad.
grim stuff. Let me, on a more positive note, upbeat note, Shelby Miller, the Braves' new pitcher from the Cardinals, threw a almost no-hitter. He went through 8 2/3 innings before he gave up a hit in a victory this past week. And Newt Gingrich, he's going to make the big bucks with this mega law firm, the Dentons. And our friend Theron Johnson was now with that firm because they
the
merged
biggest
with
law firm in the world.
McKenna Law.
It is? It is.
Biggest law firm in the world.
And my loser will be President Barack Obama. He's overseen the fall of Ramadi in Iraq.
Oh.
His mistakes in the Middle East are going to erase the blood, sweat, and tears of our soldiers and Marines that went into the Iraq War. And I guess that's fitting on Memorial Day to remember them, too. We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.